So, before we begin, how do I pronounce your name? I wasn't sure how you pronounce it.
Maike.
Maike. Is it okay if we just use your first name? Because I'm not sure
Yes,
I can
that's
pronounce it.
perfectly fine.
That doesn't sound German, your second name.
No, it's Majewski is a Polish name, but it's very common in Germany. It's from World War One and World War Two, and there were a lot of mixes. And you have a lot of Polish names from the history of Germany when all the Polish people came for mining.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's Germany is one of those countries where you always had people moving through and moving in and out, and no one speaks Polish, so it's kind of ancient history.
Right. Oh, wow. Right. Okay, hi everyone. I'm here speaking to Maike from a borrow shop in Germany called, is it Leila? Leila?
Leila.
Lila. Oh, third attempt lucky. Okay, so I guess the first question is because, as we've sort of just discussed before coming on air, this is a unique thing, isn't it? There's no other borrow shops anywhere. This is the first one ever, but as far as either of us can tell.
At least in Germany, as far as I know, we're the very first one. You do have a lot of free shops, and that's where our shop comes from. There was a free shop before that, and we found that free shop works similar to a charity shop, just without money. People come and bring stuff that they don't need anymore, and other people can come and pick up whatever they need.
Is that like, have you heard of Freecycle?
It's like Freecycle.
A physical version of it.
Yeah, it's a physical version, and it's mainly for clothes and bric-a-brac and books. So we already have several free shops in Berlin, and part of the team that started Leila, they come from a free shop, and they found, free shop just shifts things from one private household to another. And I thought, so many things that don't have to be owned privately, they should be shared because you hardly ever use them. And that's where their idea came from.
So this is if I've got a drill, for example, I might only use it for a couple of days and then the rest of the year it's just going to sit there doing nothing. So if I sort of wanted to lend it to someone else, that's more effort than me because I've got to find someone who wants it. But if there's like a central hub where I can take my drill once I've finished using it and they can do the lending out to different people, then everyone knows where to go to get the drill when they need one and
Yes,
where to
yes.
take things that they no longer need so it can be lent to other people.
Yes, that's the basic idea. There's actually a statistic saying that over the lifetime of a drill, if you take those power tools, that's a classic for a borrow shop, an electric drill is used for 13 minutes.
Oh my
I don't
goodness.
know exactly how to that number, but it was a serious study. And so the rest of the time it's sitting on the shelf. But even if you go to things that you think, oh, I need them all the time, like your washing machine, how often do you actually, how many hours a week do you use your washing machine? And how many hours is it unused, just sitting there, bulky item in your apartment? Or a Hoover?
And my Hoover very rarely gets used.
They're not handy for a borrow shop, but you could still share them with your immediate neighbors. So a borrow shop is one step to get people to start thinking that way. So it's, on the one hand, it's a very practical thing. People are very happy. They just save loads of money.
Yeah.
You can come in and get all the power tools for doing your renovations. You can get your painter's stuff. It's even just the sieve and whatever else you need for painting and to cover your floors, and then also children, and that's where I come in. Children grow through their stuff so quickly, and then you buy them, and then you have to find someone to hand it on to. So parents, and I as a parent, we are already used to thinking that way. Where do they get the stuff so I don't have to pay for it? And how do I hand it on? And I also thought, because I come from the transition movement, and we had these meetings with children being bored, and I thought, transition is something to integrate everyone.
Yeah, bring the community back together.
Yeah, and children obviously belong to everyone. They should also be integrated. Why should it be boring for them? So I started collecting toys, so the children have something to do while we meet. And thought, now how can you make transition visible and feelable for children? And I thought, actually, children already do that. Children, when they're small, we teach them, this is yours and this is not yours. You give it back. So children naturally share. And how can we keep that up? And that's how I met the people from the free shop, and we decided to do this project together. And that was about 2 years ago. And so I'm mostly responsible for the toy section and the children's stuff and all the baby stuff. We start basically before birth and all the way through. You can borrow for any walk of life. You can borrow stuff in our shop. You can pregnant and baby stuff and all the way to crutches.
Wow. So essentially you're going to bring up a whole generation of kids that instead of society telling them, no, you must have, own things privately, they're now going to be growing up learning it's good to share.
But the funny thing is they don't have to learn it. For them, it's just natural. They come in the shop and they don't have to be explained anything. It's always the adults. They come in and they need a lengthy explanation. And for children, it's just, yeah, of course, that's the way it is.
Wow. That's really awesome.
And we find there's always this funny moment because the borrow shop and the free shop we have in one shop. So we have a 2-in-1. One room is free and 2 rooms are for borrow stuff. And we put out these clothes hangers just like any other shop. And people, because we have so many second-hand shops in this area where we set up the shop, people think it's a second-hand shop. So we stuck this real big sign looking like a price tag saying, this is for free. And they come in, they can't believe it. Say, now how much does it cost? And we say, no, this is a shop, no money. And then you get them thinking, and that's the educational part about the shop, is that you start getting into discussions, into talking, and they say, now how does it work? Why don't people steal? And you say, how can you steal in a free shop?
Oh, wow. I mean, is the shop itself, I don't know Berlin that well. Is it sort of in the centre or in the suburbs, or?
It's pretty central. And we chose an area where you have a high turnover of population. So you have a lot of people who are kind of socially detached, and they're really in need because they don't know their neighbours so well. They can't just go to their neighbours, ask them for a drill. And we thought this is the perfect area to make the point. Now, these people are actually well off. We want to make sure that people understand this is not a charity thing. This is really a matter of principle. It's about changing people's lives, especially for people who can afford to buy all the power tools they want, just to show them, yes, you can afford to buy them, but why should you?
I guess it's a good area as well because you've probably got a lot of people there that have previously bought all these things and just had them gathering dust in the house, and suddenly they've got, they can, make them useful again by giving them to you, and then you can loan them out to others.
This is actually our greatest problem, is people come with crates of stuff. And if it wasn't for the asylum seekers home that is around the corner, we would just drown in things. So it's the asylum seekers, the refugees are the ones that save us from our affluence, because they come. It's their first stop in Germany. That's a home for people who just arrived. So they come, they might have 1 or 2 suitcases full of things, and they come and they really need things.
And I heard there's been some issues with that recently. Is it in Germany where this there's been some moves to sort of change the way the asylum seeking works. I think there's been some demonstrations, or am I getting mixed up with Sweden or somewhere like that?
Yeah, it's a hot debate. It's the point I wanted to make is that in other places in Berlin, the free shops, for them that's a perennial problem. It's not that they don't have enough things, that people are so greedy they take everything, but it's actually the opposite. They drown in things. They don't know what to do with all the things that people want to get rid of.
Wow. So instead of, I guess normally, say, like over here in the UK, most people have, every so often give stuff to charity. You get these charity bags that they push through the door, and you fill them up and leave them on your doorstep. But they tend to only ask for some basic things like clothes, or, they're not asking for prams or drills or ironing boards or anything like that. They just really want clothes. And everything else tends to just get thrown away, either into the bin or the local recycling centre where, even then a lot of the time it just goes to landfill. So I guess by having even just the free shops, a lot of that would at least have the potential to get reused. And then with things like the borrow shop, especially if there's a sort of a customer, if you like, nearby, like you've got the asylum seekers nearby that always need, stuff that they obviously they just weren't able to bring with them when they fled their own country. It seems a much better way of doing it than just having people throw stuff away or throw stuff in a recycle bin. So actually put it into reuse. So what happens with the other free shops where, if they're literally drowning in free stuff, what do they do? Do they have to say, sorry, we can't take any more, or?
Sometimes they do, yes.
Wow.
So the interesting part about that, I like to tell that story because it's so counterintuitive to anyone who believes in shopping. I mean, we're always told that there's scarcity, and that's why things are expensive, because we need more. But in fact, as soon as you set up a free shop, you find that people are so happy to get rid of things, and they don't want to take anything. They don't need more, they need less. And this is one thing that we do. And because this shop is a very local thing, Berlin is a rather big place, we also started in the outskirts to do a flea market, a free flea market. So people come and they set up their stall and then just give away their stuff for free instead of charging 50p.
Wow.
And they say it's so much more fun. It's grown so quickly over 1 year that we had to change premises to a bigger place.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great fun. And all you need is a place and advertise it a bit. It's really easy to set up such a gift flea market.
Do you ever sort of have any problems with commercial stores and markets nearby? Do they see you as a threat, or?
No, not at all. The shop we run is located in a community centre, and they are very happy to have us because we really do something to bring the community in. And because we don't only run the shop as a shop where people come in and they borrow stuff, but we also bring the community together, because it's about setting up this sharing community. In order to become a member of this shop and be allowed to borrow something, you have to share. So there's no membership fee. It's not about money. It's you have to bring something of yourself that you share with the sharing community. Have to bring at least one item to share, and that's how we fill our shelves.
Wow.
So the only financial aspect that is always a bit of a struggle is, of course, the rent. You don't get houses for free, you don't get shops for free. So that is on the basis of donation, and that's still a bit of a struggle. But other from that, everything we have, including the shelves, is just brought in by the members. But all you need is a few people, dedicated people, and some rooms, and someone to pay the rent. So, and then you can set up your shop.
So the cost there basically. So you've got your building cost, but everything in the building is essentially free. You might have to pay some electricity and things like that. What about you personally? How do you manage to do this? Because I'm assuming you volunteer your time for free, or
Yes, of course. We volunteer our time for no money, but I stress that, of course, I myself, I'm a customer of that shop. If I wasn't putting in my time, the shop wouldn't exist. So it's not that I do it for nothing. I do get a shop.
yeah. So you create your own free resource by creating it.
Yes, and I have to say, and I've hardly been buying anything for the past 2 years. No, maybe socks and undies, because that you don't get in a free shop. That's about it. Everything else you just find in the free shop.
Wow. Well, that's I'm just over here in the UK. I mean, we have a few small projects like this, but from the sounds of it, Berlin is just, there's lots of free shops. You've got your borrow shop. You've got the free flea market.
Yeah, it sounds very massive, but in relation to the whole population, it's still very small. We have like my transition network is called Transition Pankow, and the district of Pankow has about 360,000 people. And our free shop, our borrow shop, has about 500 members. So if you put that into relation to the population in total, we're still very marginal. But yeah, it's great fun and it's been growing a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you might say it's marginal, but that's still 500 people in your shop alone that have changed the way they think. That are probably not buying anywhere near as much as the television and the authorities and the companies would want them to.
That respect is quite successful. I would, kind of in thinking in ecological directions. But we also get a lot of people off the street, because in this community centre, people come in, they come for something else, like their children's dance class. They just come for some course or some pottery class, and then they see our shop. So they really stumble upon something that's completely alien to them. And those are the situations that are, for me, the greatest fun to see their faces when they realise, ooh, that's really cool.
Wow. So yeah, I guess it's just like an ordinary person finding themselves in a shop where everything's free would be, what's going on?
Yeah. Some people flabbergasted. Yeah, they come in and can't believe it. They ask 3 or 4 times, can I really take this? And I say, yes, you're very welcome. I'd love you to take even more. We have too many things.
Oh, do they start to come back? Do they come back again and again, or?
Yeah, those who live in the area, we have quite a few regular customers who keep coming in, and it's from all walks of life, from the single mom who's just really relieved that she doesn't have to buy all these things anymore, up to people who simply like the concept, and you can see you could easily afford to buy stuff, but yeah, they just like to drop in and maybe pick up a book or something.
Oh, wow. What sort of things do you have in the shop? Because I was looking you've got a website where, from what I can see, you've got like an inventory of some of the things in the shop and saying whether they're currently in or loaned out to someone. It's like a traffic light system. So if it's red, someone's got it.
Yes, we try very hard to have this inventory, but I have to admit that's worked for about the first 200 things. By now we're somewhere on 2,000, so it's just not doable anymore.
Oh wow! So what kind of things have you got in the shop? Obviously I've seen it, but just for the people listening, just to give them some idea as to the breadth of different things that can be found in this shop.
It varies quite a bit. I mean, the classic is the power tools and, you know, boxes for movable. You can, like, if you move house, you can borrow 40 boxes. Another classic is for parties. We have a full party set. So if you have a lot of guests, you don't have to own 30 plates. You can just come to the shop and borrow them. Or wine glasses, cutlery. Then we've got toys, games, even adult board games, stuff like that. Then the kitchen stuff is, especially in specific seasons or for birthdays, people like to come and maybe borrow the chocolate fountain or the bread making machine or popcorn machine, ice cream machine, candy floss, all kind of stuff you can borrow for your parties. And then we've got seasonal stuff like Christmas decoration, Easter decoration, carnival wigs. And then you have these specific situations in life, like pregnancy and early baby days, where you need things for half a year, and then you can hand them back. And that also shows, you know, the time that people borrow things can vary from 30 minutes to half a year, depending on what you borrow and what you need it for and how many of them we have and how many other people need it. So usually when someone wants to borrow something, we get into a talk. It's not like in a library where you just get your stamp and then you go and you might say hello or not, depending on how polite you are. But people have to talk to us. They have to kind of tell us a bit about their story. And it's a community thing. And this kind of communication also builds trust, because that's our currency. That's how we make sure that things come back. Is, you know, when you know people and you like people, you're going to treat their things well. So we think, you know, you would do that with your neighbours and your friends. You would make sure that you bring it back on time as agreed in a good nick. So we try to be exactly that.
Wow. So you're actually, it's not just like people are walking in, not saying anything, picking something up and then leaving. They're actually talking to each other and talking to you, and also I guess I think it was in either the Guardian article or on your website saying that things like drills are the most popular item.
Yeah, the power drills, certainly. We have several of them, and at least 2 or 3 of them are always out somewhere.
So I guess when someone's coming in to ask for one of those, the talk they're having is, this is a popular item. It's, you know, it's in high demand, so bring it back as soon as you finish with it. But that's giving them then, if they keep coming back and, you know, using other things from the shop, they're starting to get in their own minds how useful are these items, or how utilised, I should say, are these items. You know, what does society actually use in quantity versus what are the things that no one uses?
Yes, this actually starts when you want to become a member, because by now we have so many things that we can't just take on anything that people offer. We have a chat, kind of, what do you have that is still good, you know, that the community still needs. So start getting into thinking, you know, what do we need, what do they have, what would be useful. And then they come up with things, and sometimes you say, oh, this is something, yeah, it's an interesting item, but it's not so good for borrowing, because maybe it's not very transportable, or it's something that people, you know, like clothes is something quite private, so people wouldn't want to borrow it. We did have that in the beginning. We tried out. We even had evening dresses, and we found that this is something that people don't really like to borrow. So it's, yeah, the shop shifts according to what we see is needed. And the good thing is, because we have the free shop, if we find that something is never used or we have too many of them, we can just put it in the free shop and someone can take it. The borrow shop is mainly we try to keep up a level of functionality for things that you really, there's no use owning them on your own. If you really like, for example, also we've got visitors' bikes, or we have skates for children. We're building a whole collection, because every year your child needs a different size. So why buy it? Next season they'll wear a different size.
Do you have any problems with people borrowing stuff and then not returning it?
Of course, you do have those people. But I don't think we have more of them than any other public facility. In a public library, of course, you also have people who vandalize books and don't bring them back. We actually have one librarian in our team who says it's no worse than the public library. So a certain percentage of people are like that.
But I guess if people are, always coming to donate new stuff, and you get new members bringing their thing, and you're saying what the store needs, anything that is taken and not returned will eventually get replenished anyway.
Yes, the experience is that you can be quite relaxed about that, at least in affluent places. Also, of course, we have the problem that sometimes things break, because everything we get is used. So sometimes we get it back and people say, I'm really sorry, it broke while I was using it. And as long as it just happened and they haven't been doing something really weird with it, we just say, okay, yeah, it would have broken at some point. That's what things do. And we'll get a new one eventually. And if we don't, we can always send out a message to the community, to our members, because we have their email addresses. We can ask them, does anyone have this and that? So far, we didn't need to.
Do you interact with anything like Freecycle? So let's say if there was something that you needed, say you'd run out of drills, or there was just like a huge demand for drills all of a sudden, would you be able to sort of like get those off Freecycle and bring them into the borrow shop? Or
it's not a very common thing to be Freecycled.
Right.
I find the Berlin Freecycle group is mainly about furniture. And big electronics like fridges and things. And we do have the offer for people who are just not on the computer, who don't have a computer, who don't like to use the internet. They can give us the details and we'll Freecycle it for them. What fits into that small room? I think it's less than 20 square meters, our free shop. It's not very big.
Yeah, I saw the pictures, and we've got stuff piled up the walls and all the racks. And so, what are your plans for the future then? You said it's already growing, and you've got the free flea market and things like that. Are you looking for sort of bigger premises, and have you got any other sort of plans as to where to take it next?
No, it doesn't make sense to have it grow to bigger premises, because as a community, we already had the discussion whether 500 members is too many, because they can't get to know each other anymore. We do a lot of parties where they have a chance to meet, but if they were all to come, they wouldn't fit into the shop. So it's more about setting up new shops. So there's a group in Kreuzberg now who are looking for a place, and there's a group in Wedding, in a different area of Berlin, that has put up just a cupboard, a thing cupboard in a cafe.
Well, so you just go into the cafe and it's just there saying, take
it's
what you want.
It's there, and anyone who's a member gets a key. So that's kind of a small version that they start off. So you can always develop your own little local way of doing it. There's so many ways of trying to set up a borrow facility, and just depends on what people really need.
And I guess it requires as well, for most of them, someone to actually be there to look after the shop. And do you lock it up at night, or?
Yes, of course, because the borrow section is not for taking. We are the guardians, basically, of people's things. They're not ours. They belong to the community. So, of course, we lock up. In a city like Berlin, of course, you also have to lock up simply because you don't want people moving in. But the free shop, yeah, we tell people if we're not in, if we're not open and you want to drop off stuff for the free shop, just put it in front of the door because it can't be stolen. If it's gone by the time we arrive, even better.
Yeah, that's exactly what we want to happen anyway, is people take it. Wow, I'm just sort of blown away at I just had no idea that there was all these different things going on. Even down to the cupboard in a cafe. It just sounds like there's this sort of big cultural shift, I guess, of people starting to think differently about how they interact with the world. And
yes, I do think, while it's very much a niche thing, you do find that it's spreading. You do have cafes that just put up a little clothes rack for people to drop off stuff and pick up a new sweater while you're having a coffee. There are several places where people set up gift boxes, which is just a wee shelf with a roof on top.
These like out on the street or
give and take? Yeah, it's just out on the pavement.
So where you might get like a newspaper thing on the pavement, they've just got this box instead, and
yeah. So they just put it out in front of the house. Like in our street, people tend to put out just a box with things and says, "Please take." Of course, you can only do that when the weather is dry. But in summer, you do get that. You see it more and more. And also there's a really cool project called the Book Tree. And what they did was a school for carpentry, for carpenters. And they had to do a project. And they took this big tree, and cut in little rectangle spaces and made a flap and put it out on the street so people can put in books behind this flap. So it's rain protected but it's transparent. Everyone can see which books are in there. Made out of a tree. So it's like an ornament on the street where people can put and take books. And in a different place, I've seen an old phone booth. They put in shelves. And so you can go into the phone booth and instead of telephoning, you can pick up a book.
Yeah, I think we've got one of those over here because we've got these in England. We've got these sort of red telephone boxes that are sort of like famous because they're massively over-engineered for what they need to be. But a few years ago, they started getting rid of them all and going to the more sort of modern phone booth style things.
Where you're basically out on the streets and it's very noisy. And yes. Yeah, anyway, so I think there is this cultural shift towards borrowing and not owning. And the greatest difference between our project and many others is that it's offline. So a lot of the borrow platforms are, there's Friends and there's various other ones that where you get people together or online. But for our shop, it's inclusive for older people because they don't need to be online. So they appreciate that, and also for children, of course, because they don't have a computer yet.
Yeah, I guess with the ones that are done online, they do tend to be quite anonymous. Excuse me, because you tend to get people just sort of going there to get rid of stuff or going there to get stuff. They're never going to meet anyone really.
I'm not talking about the Freecycle just handing on things, but there are several platforms, at least in German language, which bring people together that lend each other things. It's more like Streetbank.
Right, so almost like a more sort of social network approach.
Yeah, like a social network where you borrow things from your neighbours. For the UK, I only know Streetbank, but then I didn't deeply research it. And the other thing is that, of course, you did have things like car sharing. The commercials went into, big companies went into car sharing. By now it's owned by Mercedes-Benz and whatnot. And the main difference to that is that we don't charge. So it's not exclusive socially. Yeah, and you can become a member just by bringing a set of knitting needles. You don't have to be rich.
That's fantastic. Wow. My mind's blown. It's, I had, yeah, I don't even know what other questions to ask because I'm just so amazed at what you've got going in, and this is just all within one city.
That's but then you have to imagine Berlin is like several cities in one. It's
it's a big city, but
it is a big place.
But I think I don't think there's that much stuff going on in, say, London, for example. There's a lot of things that are going on in London.
I don't know, but I know you do have several transition initiatives over there as well, in London and different boroughs. So
I'm just flabbergasted. I'm just so impressed with it.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't overdo it. We have 80 square meters. It's not such a big place.
Well, it might not be such a big physical place, but the fact that you've actually got it going, because that's half the battle. Most people, you go in all these groups online and everyone's talking about doing things. But for most people, all they ever do is talk. They never actually put that into action. They don't actually go out there and find premises and make it happen. So, and I think as well that you've got this sort of much broader sort of thing going on, because you in terms of being all inclusive, even for the kids and pensioners and everyone, there's literally nothing to stop, to block people out. Anyone can use it. You've thought of all these things. I don't think
almost. The most exclusive thing about the shop is that it's got 5 steps to go in. That's still something that I think about. Sometimes you have people coming in on crutches and you see how they struggle with the steps because we don't even have a railing. To put thought in all of these things is mainly that's the point of transition, isn't it? That you don't talk, you do things, and you do it with an oversight, that you do reconsider what are we doing, are we heading the right way, is it inclusive enough?
Yeah.
And all that. So that for me is transition. That's the special thing about it.
There's probably going to be people listening to this thinking, that's something I'd really like to do. What advice would you have for them? If someone was sitting there now listening to this and raring to go, what would you say to them?
The main thing that you need is a group of people who get along well and are dedicated to do it.
Yeah.
And everything else will just fall into place. Of course, we did have times when things were difficult, like 3 months in after we opened the shop. The head of the community centre, who didn't really know our shop, suddenly decided, we need the rooms for something else. For about 2 months, it wasn't sure whether we could stay or not until we managed to get him to actually come and see it. And then he changed his mind and everything was all right. And quite a lot of people in the community centre after 3 months were already so into our idea that they campaigned. But you can only go through a crisis like that if you have a group of people saying, we're not going to give up. So what we did was, instead of saying, now we have to close the shop, this is so sad, we said, okay, if they need different rooms, we're going to start searching for them.
Find them their own free room somewhere else.
And we started trying to find other rooms for them. So why don't you rent a different place? We are happy here. They just have to stick together and become creative. And I think they were quite impressed by the fact that we didn't want to leave.
Yeah, I think that seems to be a common theme with a lot of transition projects. That there's always someone who doesn't understand at the start that some external influence that tries to that just doesn't get it and needs to use the space or wants to sell an area off or something like that. So I think that's like the test of fire, I guess, for the group. So if the group can fend off that kind of thing, then they've got a really good chance of...
Yeah, and I think the most important thing is that you shouldn't take it personal. Like, it wasn't because he disliked our project, it was just because he didn't know. But that was quite a difficult time, those 2 months. And that's why I say, things will fall into place if you have the right idea in the right place with the right people. But you also have to be flexible enough to say, okay, if this is not going to work this way, then we'll just do it a different way instead of getting frustrated.
Yeah, I guess there's a certain element of trial and error in all of these things.
Yeah, so we meet about once a month to discuss how to go on and discuss problems arising. And of course they do arise ever so often. Yeah, the most continuous problem really is the finance for the rent, I have to say.
I mean, one of the things we found, because we probably mentioned before that we've got like a community farm and a few other things, and we're having to monetize certain elements of it because we, especially the farm, because we don't want to lose that land. There's so much pressure now for local governments to sell off the land for housing or industry or fracking or all these other money making schemes that we realised we had to actually monetize an element of it, but we just had to get creative about how we did it and do it in sort of a non-evil way. So we still give free land to the community and free food and things like this, but we reserved an area for allotments where some of the locals who want to grow stuff pay a monthly fee for their allotments, but that gives us just enough money to keep the thing going. I mean, for something like your borrow shop, could you not sell some stuff on eBay, or is it just too much hassle?
It just would go against the idea. Because I think one reason why people like to give to the shop is because they can be sure that this is not going to happen. Because we actually are sitting in the shop and we monitor a bit. We did have several people over that time who did come in, and you could tell they weren't taking for their own use. And we do stop that after a while. And that, of course, you can only do if you're there and you have your regular team that comes and has an eye on that. And I think it would mess up the whole concept. But anyways, the way we kept the rooms was not through paying lots of money, but it was through the relationship, because they were the people in the community centre who wanted us to stay, other people, and they actually changed the way they used the other rooms in the community centre in order to make room for these extra people that were supposed to be squeezed into our rooms. So it was, in the end, not a matter of money, but of relationships. So, of course, while we do have to pay that rent, and eventually we'll have to find a better way of doing that, still it's more about knowing who to speak to and being known by the people who own the premises. So if they have a personal connection to you, they're less likely to kick you out. Of course, we still live in a place, especially in the center of Berlin, where there is a high monetary pressure, not only on us, but mainly on the people who own the building. Because these rooms on the free market are worth a fortune. They would, if you rent them out to some real shop, they would earn twice as much money.
I guess, though, as the economy gets worse, a lot of especially in cities, a lot of the shops will start shutting down anyway.
Not in that area. This is one of the areas that has been gentrified to a pulp. just a few weeks ago, I saw this really cool idea about baking with pensioners for the local community cafe. And I thought, this is a really cool idea. I want to do that as well. And I went to the community centre, so why don't we do that? Do an evening where we ask the elderly people to come in and bake cakes, and then we can sell them in your neighbourhood cafe. And she said, I would love to do that, but we don't have pensioners anymore.
They've all gone.
Yeah, they can't afford to live here any longer. So that's a very different area. So I'm really looking forward to those people to open their shop, because it's a very different area, and I wonder how it's going to work there. It's a new experiment. As a founder member, I think it's one of your main goals should be that after 2 or maybe maximum of 3 years, the project doesn't need you any longer.
Yeah, so you aim to make yourself redundant?
Yes, certainly. And by now I'm in the shop maybe once a week, sometimes even less. I trained 2 volunteers myself, and I thought, okay, I trained 2 people to replace me, so I have the right to move on to the next project.
Right, are there any other things you want to talk about? Because I'm actually just... My brain now is just thinking, I want to start a borrow shop. I'm at the farm this weekend, I think, and so it's like one of the first things I'll be telling them is about this interview.
And so your plan is to set up a tool library, just for tools, or for things in general?
Initially, just for tools. So we were having a problem at the farm that as we got more and more volunteers, we were running out of tools. So we thought, how do we get tools? Let's set up a tool library and see if that works. So it's kind of grown a bit from there, in that we're now looking to set up sort of like a recycled builder's yard as well.
You're also collecting recycling materials for building.
Yeah. So, for old building materials that construction companies would normally just throw away, they'd be really useful on the farm, if we need to build a barn or anything else on there. We're doing it for the community as well. So we want the community to be able to come in and borrow tools or get building materials if they want to do some home improvements, that kind of thing.
Yeah, okay.
So we're just sort of starting to set these things up, and I read the article, I think it was in the Guardian newspaper, about your shop in Berlin, and I was like, I bet they know, a lot of the sort of problems that are involved in setting these things up.
I think the first thing you have to discuss is, what do people need in your area? What makes sense for people to borrow? And if you start with tools, it's most likely something that's a good bet, and then you can go from there.
Yes, it's encouraging people to, rather than just sit there complaining about the way the world is, actually go out and do something about it, do something to make the world a better place.
I really think the next step up would be to start a proper network of shops that do, of free shops and borrow shops.
Because I guess you could share things as well. So if you've got too much of something and the one down the road doesn't have enough.
Once we have enough shops, we can do that. We already share we have a heavy load bike, one with the big baskets in front. I have one of those, and we share that with one of the other shops. Partially at our shop and partially at theirs.
So networking the communities together as well.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Right. Okay, we'll leave it at that for now, because I'm, like I said, my brain's just on fire now. It's been absolutely fantastic talking to you. Thank you so much. It's really inspired to go out there and do similar things now.
Let me know what's happening.
I will do.
Okay.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.